Flight attendant kicks black woman off plane, learns she's the airline's CEO. A poised black woman in first class stands her ground against a flight attendant's tense demand for her to move. With an air of calm and unshakable confidence, she simply asks, "Are you sure about that?" Her unwavering demeanor sends ripples of discomfort through the cabin, but the revelation of her true identity is a stunning twist that no one anticipates, transforming the atmosphere entirely. Before we dive in, we'd love to hear where you're tuning in from in the comments. And don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more captivating stories. The airport buzzed with the familiar blend of excitement and impatience as passengers shuffled through security, gathering in anticipation. Among the bustling gates, Sarah Mitchell exuded a quiet confidence. Her tailored suit and sleek black briefcase spoke volumes about her professionalism. With a purposeful stride, she held her phone, her eyes briefly catching the subject line of an email. Board meeting agenda final notes. As she passed by the gate agent, she received a warm smile and a gentle welcome back, Miss Daniels. The agent's voice was kind yet reserved, wishing her a great flight. Ava returned the smile, her voice soft as she replied, "Thank you," while adjusting the strap of her bag, and continued down the jetway, ready for what lay ahead. Amidst the gentle chaos swirling around her inside the plane, La Thompson, a flight attendant with a perfectly pressed uniform and a hint of frazzle in her demeanor, moved with purpose to ready the first-class cabin. In this moment, she was truly in her element, her keen eyes scanning the passengers as they made their way in. Ella took immense pride in upholding order and efficiency, particularly in first class, and today was no exception. Yet a subtle tension lingered in the air, stemming from a hushed conversation she had caught earlier. A colleague had mentioned something that stirred a sense of unease within her. There was an important passenger on the flight, yet no one had revealed their identity. As Ava stepped into the first-class cabin, she took a fleeting glance at the luxurious rows of plush seats before choosing one by the window. With care, she set her briefcase at her feet, pulled out a stack of papers, and immersed herself in them, her focus unwavering and intense. La, however, noticed her almost instantly. Something about Ava's presence was undeniably striking, though La couldn't quite put her finger on it. The calm confidence radiating from Ava, the absence of any hesitation, caused Lala to pause for just a heartbeat before she moved on. Other passengers shifted in their seats, and moments later, Lala returned to Ava's row, clutching a clipboard. Her brow was furrowed, a clear sign of her unease as she glanced down at the seat number. "Excuse me," she began, her voice polite yet laced with an unmistakable edge of suspicion. "I just need to confirm your ticket." Ava looked up, her expression a mask of calm, and without a word she reached into her bag and handed over the ticket. Ella inspected it, her frown deepening as she processed the information. "This is a first-class ticket," she stated, as if trying to make sense of something that seemed so obvious. "Yes," Ava replied simply, her tone unwavering. Ella hesitated, her eyes darting around, caught in a moment of uncertainty. "If you're looking for backup, are you certain this is your assigned seat? Sometimes there's a mix-up and people mistakenly sit in the wrong section." Ava's gaze remained steady, unwavering. "This is my seat," she declared with a calm yet undeniable authority. For a fleeting moment, Ella felt a twinge of uncertainty, but she quickly brushed it aside. She had encountered her fair share of passengers attempting to sneak into first class, and something about Ava, perhaps the way she sat with such confidence, made her wary. "I'm going to have to ask you to move while we sort this out," Ella said. Her tone shifted to one of unwavering resolve. Ava leaned back slightly, her hands resting on the papers she had been reviewing. "I'm not moving," she stated with calm determination. There was no hostility in her voice, yet the finality of her words sent a ripple of unease through Ella. The tension between them thickened, drawing the attention of the surrounding passengers. Ava, seemingly unfazed, returned to her papers, while Ella stood frozen, grappling with uncertainty but refusing to yield. The air in the cabin felt suffocating, the quiet murmur of other passengers fading into mere background noise against the weight of the moment. The tension in the air was palpable as Ella gripped the clipboard tightly, her knuckles turning white with the strain of her thoughts. She was unaccustomed to facing such defiance, especially from a passenger who appeared utterly unfazed by her authority. Stealing a glance over her shoulder, she caught sight of her colleague, the younger flight attendant, Jessica Carter, who was observing the scene with wide, astonished eyes. In an instant, Jessica Carter averted her gaze, hastily preoccupying herself with arranging drinks. The murmurs in the cabin swelled, passengers exchanging curious glances and whispering in hushed tones, the atmosphere thick with intrigue and uncertainty. A man in a nearby row leaned slightly into the aisle, his eyebrows raised in concern as he tried to gauge the unfolding situation. Elia felt the weight of urgency pressing down on her. She had to act swiftly, or she risked losing control of the cabin before the flight had even begun. "Ma'am," Ella started, her voice taking on a firmer tone. "If you don't cooperate, I'll have to call for assistance. It's airline policy." But Ava didn't even glance up this time. "Then call for assistance," she replied calmly, flipping to another page of her document, her pen moving steadily across the paper, jotting down notes with an unsettling nonchalance. Jotting down notes as if LLA were invisible. The sheer audacity of her calmness ignited a surge of frustration within Ella. She straightened herself, her voice rising just a notch. "This is your last chance to move voluntarily, or I will have no choice but to escalate the situation." Ava's pen halted, and she lifted her gaze to meet Ella's, a steady look that seemed to freeze time for a heartbeat. "Do what you need to do," she said, her voice low yet commanding. There was no hint of anger, only a quiet confidence that twisted Ella's stomach in knots as she resolved not to yield. Down Ella turned and hurried to the front of the cabin, her fingers trembling slightly as she picked up the intercom phone to call for ground security to come aboard. After hanging up, she noticed Jessica Carter lingering nearby, her face ashen. "Is everything okay?" Jessica Carter asked, her voice laced with concern. Lila's reply was sharp. "I'm handling it." Jessica Carter's gaze flickered to Ava, who had returned to her writing as if the world around her had fallen silent. There was something in Ava's demeanor that made Jessica Carter uneasy, a feeling she couldn't quite grasp. It wasn't fear or arrogance, but something deeper that gnawed at her. There was an intensity in the air, something profound and almost sacred. Within moments, two airport security officers stepped onto the plane, their very presence demanding attention. The hushed murmurs in the cabin faded away, and heads turned, all eyes drawn to the tense scene unfolding. Ella pointed toward Ava, her voice steady, yet laced with anxiety. "This passenger is refusing to cooperate and insists on staying in a seat that may not belong to her." The taller officer moved closer, locking eyes with Ava as he spoke directly to her. "Ma'am, we are here to resolve the situation. In this tense moment, could you please provide us with your ticket and identification?" Ava lifted her gaze, her face a mask of calm, and without uttering a single word, she surrendered her ticket and ID. The officer scrutinized them intently, his brows furrowing as he shifted his gaze between the documents and Ava. A flicker of surprise crossed his face, but he remained silent, returning the items with a measured tone. "Everything appears to be in order," he stated, his voice devoid of emotion. "She's listed as a first-class passenger." A wave of heat rushed to Allah's cheeks. Surely there had been some kind of mistake. She couldn't help but exclaim, her heart racing. She was causing chaos, and Ava's voice sliced through the thick tension like a sharp blade. "I think you've done enough," she said, her words aimed directly at La. Her tone was steady, yet it carried an undeniable authority that hushed everyone nearby. For a brief moment, the air was thick with silence. No one dared to move. Ella stood frozen, her confidence crumbling beneath the pressure of the moment. The officers exchanged wary glances before retreating, clearly deciding this was no longer their battle to fight. As they left the cabin, the murmurs among the passengers began to swell once more. The atmosphere grew louder, filled with a mix of confusion and intrigue. Ava returned to her work, her calm demeanor unwavering. But Lila, on the other hand, felt a tempest raging within her. There was something unsettling about this woman, and Lila was resolute in her quest for the truth. She stood her ground near the front of the cabin, her chest tight with frustration, unable to shake the gnawing sensation that something was amiss. Her eyes flickered toward Ava, who was now flipping through her papers, completely unfazed by the chaos around her. The sheer audacity of it made Lila's blood boil, and she took a deep breath. She took a deep breath, desperately trying to steady her racing heart. If she wanted to regain control of the spiraling situation, she knew she had to find a different way to handle it. As the plane filled with passengers, Layla observed them settling into their seats. Some cast curious glances at Ava, while others deliberately avoided looking her way, acutely aware of the palpable tension surrounding them. The whispers had faded, but the discomfort hung heavily in the air. Jessica Carter approached with caution, a tray of drinks in her hands. Leaning in close, she whispered, "I think you should just let it go." "She has a valid ticket," Layla replied, her voice tight. "That's not the point," snapped quietly, interrupting her. "There's something unsettling about her. She's too composed, almost as if she holds secrets we're not privy to." Jessica Carter frowned, her voice gentle yet laced with concern. "Maybe she's just accustomed to people like you questioning her," she suggested, casting a wary glance at Ava. Lila stiffened at the remark, her heart racing. "What's that supposed to mean?" she retorted, her voice rising slightly in frustration. Jessica Carter quickly shook her head, her eyes wide with urgency. "Nothing. I didn't mean it like that. Perhaps we should concentrate on the other passengers," she said hurriedly, retreating and leaving Lila standing there, her irritation now intertwined with a creeping sense of unease. She returned to her duties, but her mind was a whirlwind, replaying every single detail of her interaction with Ava, desperately searching for any hint that could unravel the mystery of her confidence. The nagging feeling in her gut was relentless, whispering that something far more significant was unfolding, and she loathed the feeling of being left in the shadows. Meanwhile, Ava sat quietly in her seat, her pen dancing gracefully across the page, seemingly oblivious to the curious glances still directed her way. Or perhaps she simply didn't care. Every so often, she would glance at her phone, responding to messages with an ease that only deepened the intrigue. With a grace that spoke of years spent honing her craft, she navigated her emails with an efficiency that captivated those around her. The calmness she exuded only deepened the intrigue of the passengers nearby. A man seated across the aisle, unable to contain his curiosity, leaned in closer to Ava. "Excuse me," he murmured, his voice barely above a whisper. "I couldn't help but notice everything that just happened. Are you someone important?" Ava met his gaze for a fleeting moment, a gentle smile playing at the corners of her lips. "I'm just a passenger like everyone else," she replied with warmth, before turning her attention back to her work. The man, feeling a mix of admiration and respect, leaned back in his seat. It was evident that she was deeply unsatisfied with the answer, yet she held back from pursuing it further. However, Eli overheard the exchange and felt her irritation rise. Just a passenger? She couldn't accept that for a moment. There was something Ava was hiding, and Lai was resolute in uncovering the truth. As the boarding process neared its conclusion, Ella caught sight of the head flight attendant, Diane Reynolds, entering the cabin to finalize preparations. Diane Reynolds, older and seasoned, exuded an undeniable authority that even Ella couldn't help but respect. In her desperation for support, Ella quickly intercepted her. "Diane Reynolds," Ella said in a hushed tone, casting a worried glance toward Ava. "We might have a problem with one of the passengers in first class. She's being difficult." Diane Reynolds raised an eyebrow, her keen eyes following Lila's gaze to Ava. "What kind of problem?" she inquired, her tone laced with concern. "She's refusing to move seats." Lila hesitated, her voice tinged with frustration. "She's acting like she owns the place." A faint smirk played on Diane Reynolds' lips, a glimmer of amusement dancing in her eyes. "Maybe she does," she replied cryptically, her voice light yet knowing. Without waiting for Lila's response, Diane Reynolds strode purposefully toward Ava's seat. Lila felt her heart race as Diane Reynolds drew closer to Ava. She leaned down slightly, her voice a soothing whisper. "Miss Daniels, is everything all right?" Lila's breath hitched in her throat. How did Diane Reynolds know her name? Ava looked up, a gentle smile breaking across her face, softening her features for the first time. "Everything's fine, Diane Reynolds. Just a little misunderstanding. That's all. Diane Reynolds nodded, her presence radiating reassurance. Let me know if there's anything you need. She straightened and walked away, her calm demeanor leaving no space for further questions. In that moment, Lila felt her world shift beneath her. Her mind raced, a whirlwind of thoughts colliding as she struggled to make sense of it all. Who was this woman? And why did Diane Reynolds, a person who seldom engaged in idle chatter, know her name? Lila's frustration morphed into a deep, gnawing sense of dread. Something was unfolding beyond her grasp, and she felt increasingly powerless. Her pulse quickened as she watched Diane Reynolds slip into the galley, her casual demeanor only deepening the mystery. An unsettling blend of confusion and fear washed over her, especially in the way Diane Reynolds had addressed Ava. Calm, almost reverent. A sense of unease washed over her as she pondered who Sarah Mitchell was and why it felt like everyone around her held the key to that mystery. Desperate for answers, Lila made her way to the galley where Diane Reynolds was nonchalantly flipping through the flight manifest. Lila hesitated, her heart racing, before finally speaking, her voice dropping to a near whisper, filled with urgency. Diane Reynolds, how do you know her? Diane Reynolds didn't lift her gaze, her fingers gliding over the pages with an air of indifference. No, she replied, but there was a subtle lilt in her tone that hinted she already knew more than she let on. The woman in 2A, Lila pressed, her curiosity igniting a fire within her. Her frustration surged once more, a tide of emotions threatening to spill over. You called her by name. Was she some kind of special guest? I felt a desperate need to understand if there was something I was overlooking. Finally, Diane Reynolds lifted her gaze, her expression a mask of inscrutability. Ella, you're making a mountain out of a molehill. She's just a frequent flyer, that's all. Her tone was nonchalant, yet her eyes betrayed a deeper, more guarded truth. I wasn't convinced. Frequent flyer? I echoed, my skepticism ringing clear. If she's just another passenger, why are you treating her like she owns the plane? Diane Reynolds let out a weary sigh as she set down the manifest. Look, I don't have time for this, she said, her voice resolute. Now focus on your job, Lila. The flight's about to take off, and we can't afford any more drama in the cabin. Lila opened her mouth to protest but caught herself, feeling the weight of Diane Reynolds' dismissal. It felt intentional, as if there was something hidden beneath the surface. Frustration bubbled within her, yet she held back, returning to the cabin with her thoughts racing. If Diane Reynolds wasn't going to provide the answers she sought, Lila would have to uncover the truth on her own. Meanwhile, in first class, Ava remained undisturbed, her concentration unwavering, seemingly untouched by the chaos around her. Unfazed by the earlier confrontation, it was as if the moment had vanished into thin air. The calmness, the poise, it gnawed at Leigh, an unsettling feeling that Ava was far more than just another passenger. There was an undeniable air of authority surrounding her, something unspoken yet profoundly felt. As the plane began its taxi to the runway, Ella found herself trapped in a loop, replaying the events in her mind, desperately searching for clues she might have overlooked. The way Ava had brushed her off, the manner in which Diane Reynolds had addressed her, the sheer confidence radiating from her, it all pointed to something deeper, something significant. Bigger, but what then, as the plane ascended and the seatbelt sign flicked off? Lila's resolve solidified. She was not going to let this slip away. There had to be an explanation, and she was fiercely determined to uncover it. Keeping a watchful eye on Ava from a distance, Lila decided to bide her time, waiting for the moment to seek the answers she desperately craved. Yet as she observed Ava, calm and composed, tapping away on her phone, an unsettling feeling gnawed at her, a sense that she was teetering on the brink of a much larger storm, one she had unknowingly set into motion. The cabin settled into a gentle hum enveloped the cabin as the plane ascended to cruising altitude. Passengers unfastened their seatbelts, stretching their limbs and reaching for laptops or magazines. Yet Lila, still grappling with the weight of her conversation with Diane Reynolds, moved through her duties like a ghost, her thoughts adrift. She served drinks, ensured seatbelt compliance, and attended to passenger requests, but her heart and mind were tethered to Ava. Every so often, she stole a fleeting glance at the mysterious woman in 2A who had set her papers aside, scrolling through her phone with an air of tranquility that both intrigued and unsettled Lila, unreadable at times. She would type something with fingers that danced across the keys, quick and purposeful, before her gaze drifted out the window, as if she were wandering through her own thoughts. Lila's curiosity ignited more fiercely with every fleeting moment. A break in the monotony emerged when a passenger in economy class called out for help with their overhead luggage. Seizing the moment, Lila watched as Jessica Carter moved toward the back to assist, and she slipped into position near Ava's row. She lingered there, feigning an adjustment of the cabin lighting, all the while yearning to catch a glimpse of Ava's phone screen. But all she could manage to see was the faint outline of a logo, a sleek, modern design that felt unfamiliar. Ava tilted the phone slightly, obscuring the view. Ella cleared her throat, mustering a polite smile as Ava glanced up. "Everything all right here?" she asked, her voice laced with a forced cheerfulness. Ava studied her for a moment before nodding. "Everything's fine, thank you." The response, though simple and polite, weighed heavily on Ella. She craved more, needed to delve deeper, but Ava's demeanor revealed nothing. It was like trying to read a locked book, and the frustration bubbled within Ella as she excused herself and moved away. To the galley where Jessica Carter was pouring drinks for the next service, Ella whispered urgently, "Have you noticed anything strange about the woman in 2A? Jessica Carter frowned, clearly hesitant to dive into the conversation. "You mean the one you've been arguing with all morning?" Ella brushed off the jab, her concern palpable. "Yes, don't you think she's off? Like there's something she's not telling us?" Jessica Carter sighed, placing a soda can on the tray. "Honestly, La, she seems perfectly normal to me. Calm, polite. If anything, she's handling this better than you are." Ella scowled, frustration bubbling up. "You don't understand, Diane Reynolds." Recognizes her. She even called her by name. Jessica Carter's response was laced with dismissal. Diane Reynolds, with her years of experience, knows countless passengers. But it wasn't merely Lila's insistence that caught her attention. It was the careful, almost reverent way she spoke. It felt out of place. Jessica Carter rolled her eyes, brushing it off. "Maybe she's someone significant, a corporate executive or something. Who cares? It's not our responsibility to pry into passengers' lives." Yet the word corporate lingered in Lila's thoughts, igniting a new possibility. What if Ava had ties to the airline? That realization sent a shiver down her spine. Diane Reynolds' familiarity with Ava stirred something deep within, while Ava's unwavering confidence was both captivating and perplexing. Why had no one brought this up? VIP passengers typically stood out on the manifest, yet Ella had found nothing about Sarah Mitchell. As fragments of information began to align, the full picture still eluded her grasp. A sense of urgency washed over Ella. She felt an undeniable pull to delve deeper. Ava was not just another face in the crowd, and Ella was resolute in her quest for the truth, no matter the obstacles. As she made her way back to the cabin, her gaze locked onto Ava, a fierce determination ignited within her. Whatever secret Sarah Mitchell held, Leia was resolute in her quest to uncover them as the flight pressed on. Her determination simmered just beneath the surface, propelling her through the cabin with a fierce sense of purpose. Each task she completed was tinged with the urgency of her true mission, to unravel the enigma of the composed woman in 2A. Meanwhile, Ava exuded an unshakable calm, her presence almost magnetic. Passengers nearby occasionally stole glances in her direction, their curiosity thick in the air, yet unvoiced. She held on to her composure, gently sipping from her glass of water while her eyes flickered over her phone. If she sensed Lila's lingering gaze, she showed no sign of it. Ella felt a surge of determination and opted for a more straightforward tactic. She slipped back into the galley, her heart racing as she accessed the passenger manifest. Her fingers hovered over the tablet, scrolling through the list in search of AA's name. There it was, Daniels, Ava. Yet nothing about it caught her attention. No special notations, no VIP status, nothing to suggest she was anything more than just another first-class passenger. Elile's frustration boiled over as she stared at the screen, her mind a whirlwind of confusion. If Ava wasn't marked as a VIP, Then why did Diane Reynolds treat her with such reverence? The pieces of this puzzle just wouldn't fit, and the mystery only grew more intense. Jessica Carter entered the galley, catching Ella hunched over the tablet. "What are you doing now?" she asked, her voice thick with irritation. "Just checking something," Ella replied hastily, closing the manifest and setting the tablet aside. She turned to face Jessica Carter, arms crossed tightly. "You said she might be someone important. What if she's connected to corporate?" Jessica Carter raised an eyebrow. "You're still on this? Let it go, whoever she is. It's not our business." But Lila's voice was low yet urgent as she replied, "What if it is? What if she's someone we should have known about? Someone who could affect our jobs?" Jessica Carter sighed, shaking her head. "If that's the case, then you should probably stop making a scene around her. Just do your job and move on." Lila's jaw tightened as Jessica Carter walked away, her words hanging in the air like an unwelcome truth. The thought of digging herself into a hole gnawed at her, yet her curiosity refused to let go. She needed to let her stop. If A.A. Daniels had any ties to the airline, Ella had to find out before it was too late. Back in the cabin, La threw herself into her duties, her movements sharp and precise as she cleared trays and offered refreshments. When she reached Ava's row, she paused, forcing a polite smile. "Would you like anything else to drink, Miss Daniels?" she asked, her tone dripping with sweetness. Ava looked up, her expression unreadable. "No, thank you," she replied, her voice calm and steady. Ella hesitated, as if hoping for more from Ava, but the woman returned to her phone, leaving Ella feeling a pang of disappointment in the silence that followed. As her frustration grew, she felt an unsettling tension in the air, a nagging suspicion that Ava was toying with her, deliberately shrouding herself in mystery to keep her off balance. Then as Lila walked by again, she caught a fleeting glimpse of Ava's phone screen, and her heart skipped a beat. The title of a document was unmistakably clear: Corporate Strategy CEO Address. Lila's breath hitched in her throat. CEO? Her mind raced, the weight of the realization crashing over her like a tidal wave. Was Sarah Mitchell truly the CEO of the airline? It seemed unfathomable, yet the thought took root in her mind, gripping her tightly and refusing to let go. She withdrew to the galley, her heart racing with every beat. If Ava was truly who she now feared, then Eli had just committed the gravest error of her career. Her thoughts spiraled with the weight of what could be, her earlier resolve now entwined with a creeping terror. The storm she had sensed before loomed closer, and she found herself at its very heart. Ella pressed against the galley counter, her hands clutching the edge as she fought to regain her composure. Her heart thundered as the words on Ava's phone screen echoed relentlessly in her mind. In the corporate strategy CEO address, it felt far too significant to be mere coincidence. Sarah Mitchell was not just another passenger. She was a force to be reckoned with, someone who held the power to shape destinies and alter careers. If Layla's instincts were right, she had unwittingly stepped onto a precarious landmine. As she stole a glance at the cabin where Ava sat with an unsettling calmness, Layla's anxiety surged. The woman exuded an air of tranquility, yet that only intensified Layla's dread. What if Ava was silently scrutinizing her, biding her time to confront Layla about her behavior later? The mere thought sent a shiver down Layla's spine. A shiver ran down her spine as Jessica Carter stepped into the galley, her eyebrow arching at Lila's ghostly expression. "What's wrong with you now?" she asked, clearly exasperated by Lila's fixation on Ava. Lila hesitated, torn between her instinct to keep quiet and the overwhelming need to share her theory. Finally, she leaned in closer, her voice barely above a whisper. "Jessica Carter, I think she's the CEO." Jessica Carter blinked, taken aback. "What? Who? Sarah Mitchell?" Lila's urgency spilled over, her voice trembling with fear and excitement. "I saw something on her phone, a document about a CEO address. What if she's the CEO of the airline?" Jessica Carter stared in disbelief, her shock palpable. "You're joking, right? That's absurd. Why on earth would the CEO of an airline be flying on one of her own planes like just another passenger?" "I don't know," Ella hissed, urgency in her voice. "But think about it. Diane Reynolds knew her. She addressed her by name, and the way she's been acting so composed, as if nothing phases her, it all adds up. Jessica Carter crossed her arms, skepticism still etched across her face. Even if that's true, what does it matter? She hasn't done anything to you. You're the one who's been acting. Love felt her frustration surge within her. It mattered deeply because if she held the title of CEO, both her job and Jessica Carter's could be hanging by a thread. Jessica Carter sighed, shaking her head in exasperation. If she's the CEO, she's likely accustomed to handling far more significant issues than this. Just stop fixating on her, Layla. You're only complicating things. But Layla couldn't shake it off. Her mind raced, torn between the urge to confront Ava and apologize, or the fear that it might only exacerbate the situation. She felt trapped, ensnared in a web of escalating anxiety and an insatiable curiosity as the intercom buzzed in the background, crackled, interrupting her thoughts. The captain's voice filled the cabin, announcing that the flight was smooth and on schedule. LA barely registered the words. Her mind was consumed with thoughts of Ava. She needed to know, needed that confirmation that her theory was right. Steeling herself, LA left the galley and walked back into the cabin. As she passed Ava's row, her steps slowed, caught in a moment of hesitation about whether to speak. Ava glanced up briefly, her calm, unreadable expression meeting Ella's gaze. The intensity of that fleeting connection sent a rush of emotions through her. Lila's breath caught in her throat, and she quickly averted her gaze, feigning an adjustment of the overhead bin as she moved down the aisle. Ella caught snippets of conversations among the passengers, their words swirling around her like a storm. They were discussing Ava now, her poise, the earlier incident, the security officers who had come and gone. It was painfully clear that Ava was not just another traveler to them. The curiosity was palpable, and Ella could feel the weight of their attention shifting back to her. Returning to the galley once more, Ella felt her composure begin to crumble. If Sarah Mitchell truly was the CEO, then everything was about to change. Lila's actions were not merely a blunder, they were a catastrophic turning point in her career. She was desperate to find a way to mend the situation before the plane touched down. As she paced the cramped galley, her mind raced uncontrollably. If Sarah Mitchell truly held the position of CEO at the airline, the weight of that reality was staggering. Every confrontation, every accusation, even the call to security now felt profoundly misguided. The calm assurance Ava had shown earlier transformed in Lila's eyes from mere arrogance to a serene strength that left her feeling small and vulnerable. There was a sense of certainty in someone who was accustomed to earning respect. Yet here was Ella, feeling belittled and treated like a troublesome passenger. Jessica Carter's earlier words echoed in her mind. Just stop fixating on her. But how could she possibly do that when Ava held the power to determine her future? Ella felt an overwhelming urgency to take control of the situation, to mend what was broken, but every avenue she considered felt like a precarious trap. Should she approach Ava and offer an apology? Or would that come off as disingenuous? Should she wait for Ava to address it? But what if she chose to escalate the matter directly to corporate instead? The uncertainty gnawed at her. The relentless what-ifs swirled around her, each one more unsettling than the last. Taking a deep breath, Ella resolved to gather more information before making any decisions. She couldn't act without certainty. As she stepped out of the galley, her eyes landed on Diane Reynolds near the cockpit door, engaged in conversation with the captain over the intercom. If anyone could shed light on Ava's identity, it was Diane Reynolds, and this time, LLA was determined not to leave without the answers she desperately sought. She approached with caution, her voice barely above a whisper as she interrupted. "Diane Reynolds, can I have a word?" Diane Reynolds turned, her expression a complex mix of emotions. A mix of curiosity and mild annoyance washed over her. "What is it?" LA hesitated, her voice dropping even lower. "I need to know the truth about Sarah Mitchell. Is she someone important? Someone connected to the airline?" Diane Reynolds' lips twitched, as if she were fighting back a smile. "I told you before, Ella. She's just a frequent flyer." Ella stepped closer, her frustration bubbling to the surface. "You're lying," she said, her voice steady yet firm. "You know something. Why did you call her by name? Why did you act so careful around her? In that moment, Diane Reynolds' expression shifted, her professional facade beginning to crack. For just a fleeting moment, a sense of caution enveloped her as she repeated, her tone laced with concern. You're imagining things. No, I'm not, Lila retorted, her voice filled with urgency. I saw something on her phone, a document about a CEO address. The way she carries herself, the way you and even the security officers treat her, it's not normal. She's someone important, isn't she? Diane Reynolds let out a sigh, her shoulders easing just a bit as she crossed her arms. For a moment, silence hung between them, her eyes meticulously assessing Lila, as if deliberating how much to share. At last, she leaned in closer, her voice dropping to a near whisper. Lila, listen to me carefully. Whatever thoughts are swirling in your mind, just pause for a moment. If she hasn't spoken up yet, that's actually a glimmer of hope. Don't make things worse by digging for confirmation. It hit Ella like a thunderclap. Diane Reynolds hadn't denied it. Sarah Mitchell was more than just a frequent flyer. Diane Reynolds' warning only solidified what Lela had already feared. Ava wielded power, and Lela had likely crossed a line in the most devastating way. But if she's the CEO, Eliela's voice faltered, why wouldn't she say anything? Why would she let this linger in silence? Diane Reynolds' eyes softened, almost filled with pity. Perhaps it was because she was testing you, she said simply. Or maybe it was because she didn't need to utter a word. People like her don't just demand respect. They expect it. Laya felt her stomach drop as she reflected on every moment of their confrontation, every instance where she had doubted, challenged, or outright dismissed Ava. She had overlooked the quiet signals, brushed aside the subtle authority Ava radiated, and escalated a situation that could have been entirely avoided. The weight of her mistakes settled heavily on her shoulders, like an unbearable lead. The blanket she had yearned for so fiercely, a symbol of her desire to assert control and uphold her authority in the cabin, had blinded her to the truth of Ava's calm demeanor. Now it was painfully evident that Ava had nothing to prove. The grip on control that Ella had clung to so tightly had never truly belonged to her. As Diane Reynolds turned to leave, Ellie's voice trembled with desperation, calling after her, "What should I do?" Diane Reynolds paused, casting a thoughtful glance back, her expression steady. "Do your job, Ellie. Treat her like any other passenger. If she wants to say something, she will. Until then, stay." Professional Diane Reynolds' words provided scant solace as she made her way back to the cabin. Laya's mind raced uncontrollably, her eyes darting across the passengers until they landed once more on Ava. This time, Ava's serene composure felt more daunting than ever. She sat there seemingly unfazed, a subtle smile gracing her lips, as if she possessed an intimate understanding of the chaos unfolding around them, and was perfectly at ease with letting it play out on her own terms. Laya took a trembling breath, continuing down the aisle, her thoughts a turbulent storm of anxiety and regret that she simply couldn't shake off. The realization that Ava's silence was not an act of forgiveness, but rather a calculated move weighed heavily on Ella's heart. She knew that whatever unfolded next would be beyond her grasp. The cabin hummed with a quiet energy as passengers settled into their routines for the flight. Some lost themselves in movies on their screens, while others surrendered to sleep, neck pillows cradling them. Yet for Eliela, the tension in the air was almost unbearable, a palpable force that pressed down on her with each step past Ava's row. In stark contrast, Ava remained composed, her tranquility a sharp reminder of the storm brewing within Lila. Lila's heart was a storm of emotions as she tucked her papers away, her fingers now anxiously flipping through a book. Her focus was unwavering, yet it was the unsettling calmness of Ava that gnawed at her. There was something unnerving about the way Ava moved, so composed and seemingly untouched by the earlier conflict, as if she held all the power without needing to flaunt it. The weight of uncertainty pressed heavily on Lila. She could no longer endure the tension. She felt an urgent need to reclaim some semblance of control over the situation, or at the very least to mitigate the fallout. Apologizing seemed like the only path forward. Option, but the very thought of taking that step filled her with dread. What if Ava turned her away, or worse, held her apology against her in the future? Leela felt the weight of time pressing down on her. The flight wouldn't last forever, and she couldn't bear the thought of leaving things unresolved. Gathering every ounce of courage she could muster, Leela took a deep breath and walked toward Ava's seat. As she approached, Ava looked up, her expression polite yet inscrutable. "Miss Daniels," Leela began, her voice soft but laced with anxiety, "I wanted to check in and see if there's anything I can do to make your flight more comfortable." Ava's eyes bore into her, and Ella felt as if her very soul was being examined. After a moment that stretched painfully, Ava offered a faint smile. "Thank you," she said, her voice calm and measured. "I'm perfectly fine." Ella hesitated, the words she longed to express trapped in her throat. Ava's polite response felt like an impenetrable wall, a barrier that Ella couldn't find a way to breach. Earlier," Ella stumbled, her confidence crumbling under Ava's unwavering gaze. "I just want to apologize if I came across as disrespectful." Ava closed her book slowly, the weight of the moment hanging heavily in the air. With every movement carefully measured, she set it down on the tray table and folded her hands in her lap. "You were doing your job," she said with a calmness that cut deep. "No need to apologize." That composed, almost indifferent response only intensified Layla's turmoil. It wasn't forgiveness. It felt like a dismissal, and Layla could sense it. Ava's tone held no malice, yet it offered no invitation for further dialogue. Layla felt cast aside, as if Ava had already moved on from the incident, leaving her to simmer in her own regret. "Thank you," Layla murmured awkwardly, her voice barely a whisper, before stepping back. Retreating to the galley, she sought a moment to breathe, her hands trembling as they clutched the edge of the counter. The encounter replayed in her mind like a haunting melody, each note echoing Ava's unnerving calmness. It was almost surreal, the way Ava maintained her composure amidst the chaos. It became painfully clear that Ava had no intention of demanding an apology or escalating the situation. She simply didn't need to. Lila's spiraling thoughts were abruptly interrupted by Jessica Carter, who entered the galley with a look of confusion etched across her face. "What's going on with you?" Jessica Carter asked, crossing her arms, concern lacing her voice. "You look like you've seen a ghost." Ella shook her head, desperately trying to regain her composure. I attempted to apologize to her, but her voice trembled as she admitted, "It's fine," brushing it off as if it were nothing. "Maybe it doesn't matter," Jessica Carter said with a casual shrug. "She probably doesn't care as much as you think." Ella shot her a look, frustration bubbling beneath the surface. "You don't understand. People like her don't forget things like this. They just bear it in silence. She's not going to let this go. She's just biding her time." Jessica Carter raised an eyebrow, questioning. Ella had no answer, and the uncertainty gnawed at her, leaving a heavy weight in her chest. Each unanswered question felt like a heavy stone added to the burden on her shoulders. What if Ava was just biding her time until the flight landed? What if she intended to head straight to corporate? Lila was left in the dark, and the uncertainty was driving her to the brink of madness. Meanwhile, in the cabin, Ava had returned to her book, her expression tranquil as if nothing was amiss. Yet Lila couldn't shake the unsettling feeling that beneath that calm facade lay a tempest ready to unleash itself. And when it finally erupted, Lila was convinced she would be caught in the eye of the storm. The hours dragged on, stretching into an eternity. Time stretched on endlessly, each minute dragging painfully as La grappled with the heavy burden of her unease. Every sound in the cabin felt magnified, the low hum of the engines, the soft rustle of pages turning, the occasional clink of a glass being set down. With every slight movement from Ava, Ela's heart raced, her eyes darting toward her, half expecting some grand revelation or sudden action. Yet Ava remained composed, lost in her book, seemingly at peace with the world, or so it appeared. La's internal turmoil grew louder, a cacophony of doubt and regret. Should she attempt another apology, or would it be better to let it go? Each option felt impossibly heavy. It felt like a gamble, and she was uncertain how much longer she could withstand the mounting tension. As she navigated through the cabin, collecting empty glasses and straightening tray tables, she caught sight of a few passengers whispering among themselves. Though their words eluded her, their furtive glances toward Ava ignited a fresh surge of paranoia within her. What do they know? What are they saying? Lila's nerves frayed even further, the silence and whispers growing increasingly accusatory with each passing moment. By the time she returned to the galley, Diane Reynolds was already there. Once more with a steady breath, Ella meticulously checked the inventory for the meal service, her heart racing as she approached Diane Reynolds. The weight of her thoughts pressed heavily on her, overpowering the lingering fear of being brushed aside. "Diane Reynolds," she said, her voice trembling with uncertainty. "I need to know, do you think she's going to file a complaint?" Diane Reynolds continued her work, seemingly unfazed before finally turning to LLA. Her gaze was calm yet resolute. "Elia, you're letting this consume you. Just focus on your job and stop worrying about her." "I can't," Elia confessed, her voice cracking under the strain, her voice barely above a whisper. "If she truly is who I suspect, this isn't merely a minor error. It could jeopardize everything I've worked for." Setting aside the inventory sheet, I realize that worrying won't solve anything. I've been in this game long enough to understand one crucial truth. The most significant people are often the ones who don't feel the need to assert their power. If she intended to create a scene, she would have done so by now. But what if she's biding her time until we land? What if she plans to address this quietly through corporate channels? Diane Reynolds cast her a worried glance. A long, measured gaze lingered as she spoke, her words carefully chosen. If she's waiting, then hovering over her or acting nervous won't change her mind. It will only make you look worse. Ella fell silent, the weight of Diane Reynolds' truth pressing heavily on her heart. She realized she had been spiraling, allowing her fears to dictate her actions, and it had only deepened her troubles. If Ava was indeed waiting to make her move, there was nothing Ella could do now but cling to the hope for mercy. Diane Reynolds' tone softened, a gentle reminder. "Just finish the flight, Layla. Professional, if there are consequences, you'll face them when they arrive." LLA nodded, yet the words did little to soothe her racing heart. She returned to the cabin, immersing herself in her tasks, desperately trying to ignore Ava, but the weight of the tension hung in the air, a relentless reminder that this battle was far from over. Hours later, as the captain announced their descent, the cabin buzzed with the sounds of passengers gathering their belongings, a cacophony that only heightened Ella's anxiety. She felt her chest constrict as the harsh reality of the situation crashed down on her. The end of the flight was nearing its end, and with it came a whirlwind of emotions as the possibility of Ava unveiling her true self loomed over Lila. What if Ava took drastic measures against her? As the plane touched down and made its way to the gate, Lila's mind spiraled through countless scenarios. Would Ava address her before disembarking? Would she head straight to corporate, or would she simply walk away, leaving Lila in a torment of uncertainty, waiting for the inevitable fallout? As the seatbelt sign flickered off and passengers began to rise for their luggage, Lila's heart raced. She watched Ava with a mix of dread and fascination as she calmly closed her book, tucked it into her bag, and stood up. Ava moved with an unsettling grace, and Lila felt the weight of the moment pressing down on her. With the same composed efficiency she had shown throughout the flight, Ava stepped into the aisle, her eyes briefly locking with Lila's. There was no malice, no smirk, no hint of her thoughts, just that unsettling calm that had unnerved Lila from the very beginning. "Thank you for the flight," Ava said, her tone polite yet distant. Lila opened her mouth to respond, but the words caught in her throat. All she could manage was a faint, "You're welcome," and then Ava was gone, vanishing down the aisle and out of sight. Lila stood frozen, her heart racing as the cabin emptied around her. The silence left by Ava felt overwhelming, a gaping void filled with unanswered questions and an unsettling uncertainty. What would come next? Would she hear from Corpit, or had AA truly let it all go? The ambiguity gnawed at her, almost more painful than a direct confrontation. Lila knew she would be replaying this flight in her mind for days, haunted by the moments that had just passed. As the last of the passengers disembarked, she remained in the now desolate cabin, her hands gripping the back of a seat for support, the tension palpable in the air. The tension that had accumulated during the flight coiled tightly within her, refusing to let go. She found herself replaying Ava's parting words in her mind. "Thank you for the flight." So simple, so polite, yet they felt heavy with unspoken significance. Was Ava truly expressing gratitude, or was it a quiet farewell before the storm of consequences began? As Diane Reynolds stepped into the cabin, clipboard in hand, she scanned the rows for any forgotten items. Her gaze fell on Lila, who appeared as if she had just sprinted a marathon. Are you going to stand there all day, or are you going to help clean up? Leah barely registered Diane Reynolds' words. She's gone, she muttered, more to herself than to Diane Reynolds. Diane Reynolds sighed, placing the clipboard on an empty seat. Of course she's gone. That's what passengers do when the flight ends. You don't get it, Leah said, finally looking at Diane Reynolds. She didn't voice a complaint, nor did she utter a word about what had transpired. Just a quiet, heartfelt thank you. Diane Reynolds leaned against the seat back, studying Leah carefully, and that realization weighed heavily on her. And that's a bad thing, because she's not just any passenger, Leah exclaimed, her voice trembling with emotion. My heart raced at the thought. If she truly is the CEO, she had the power to obliterate me in that moment, yet she chose not to. Why? What could she possibly be scheming? Diane Reynolds shook her head, her face a mask of calm exasperation. Ella, you're spiraling. If she wanted to create chaos or report you, she would have done it by now. People like her don't play games, they confront issues head on. But what if her strategy was to deal with this through corporate channels? Ella whispered, almost fearfully. So I won't even see it coming. Diane Reynolds straightened, her voice taking on a resolute tone. If that's the case, then standing here, worrying endlessly about it won't change anything. Look, you made a mistake. It happens to the best of us. You were just trying to do your job, even if you went a bit too far. If she's the kind of leader I believe she is, she'll understand that. Lila swallowed hard, her fear still gripping her tightly. What if she doesn't? Diane Reynolds' expression softened as she placed a reassuring hand on Lila's shoulder. Then you learn from it. That's all you can do. Those words offered a glimmer of solace, yet they couldn't chase away the heavy weight in Lila's chest. She nodded faintly and returned to tidying the cabin, her movements feeling mechanical and distant. Her mind raced, every discarded magazine and crumpled napkin amplifying the heavy burden of her uncertainty. Once the cabin was cleaned, the crew gathered their belongings, ready to disembark. Elia moved slower than the others, her nerves holding her back from the comforting embrace of the plane. The terminal beyond loomed like a hostile landscape, where the weight of her choices threatened to overwhelm her. As she stepped into the terminal, she scanned the crowd, her heart aching with the instinctive hope of catching a glimpse of Ava. She found herself waiting, perhaps hoping for a moment of connection with airline representatives or a call that could determine Laya's fate. But there was no sign of her. The passengers had scattered, Ava lost among them, leaving only the chaotic rhythm of travelers rushing between gates. Diane Reynolds passed by, casting Ola a pointed look, urging her to go home. Worrying yourself sick won't change anything, she said. La nodded numbly, yet her heart was heavy with unease. She made her way to the staff exit, her steps slow and hesitant. Each corner she turned felt like it might unveil a new consequence, a haunting reminder of the unexpected fallout that loomed ahead. But nothing came. The terminal felt cold and unyielding against her inner chaos, the world continuing its relentless march as if nothing had transpired. When she finally emerged into the brisk evening air, Lila hesitated, her heart weighed down by the burden of uncertainty. Sarah Mitchell had left her grappling with more questions than she could bear. The image of Ava's composed facade lingered in Lila's mind like a haunting specter. Had Ava truly forgiven her, or was she merely biding her time? The ambiguity gnawed at her, an unbearable ache, and Lila understood that she wouldn't find solace until she uncovered a clear truth. As she approached her car, her phone buzzed, breaking the heavy silence. Her pocket buzzed sharply, a sudden jolt that sent a fresh wave of anxiety coursing through her veins. Pulling it out, she saw an email notification from the airline's corporate office. Her breath hitched as she tapped the screen, the subject line striking her like a bolt. Performance review follow-up. Immediate attention required. Lila's legs turned to jelly as she leaned against her car for support, her worst fears materializing before her eyes. She could already feel the ground slipping away beneath her, and with trembling hands she opened the email, bracing herself for what was to come. What she might find. Lila stared at the email, her fingers frozen on the screen. The subject line burned in her mind. Performance review follow-up, immediate attention required. Her breath came shallow and quick, her pulse pounding in her ears. This was it, the fallout she had been dreading. She hesitated, her thumb hovering over the email, every nerve in her body screaming at her to open it, yet paralyzed by the fear of what it might say. Taking a deep breath, she tapped the message. The text loaded slowly, or so it felt to her in her hyper-aware state. I scanned the email, my eyes struggling to focus as the words blurred together, until suddenly one sentence pierced through the haze. You are required to report to the corporate office tomorrow morning at 9 a.m. As she prepared for the meeting about conduct during Flight 827, her heart sank at 827. The weight of the situation became painfully clear. There was no room for doubt anymore. Sarah Mitchell had remained silent on the plane, but the tension in the air suggested she hadn't moved on from it. Lila's thoughts spiraled, the walls of anxiety closing in as she contemplated the potential consequences. This wasn't merely a reprimand, it was a corporate meeting, a serious step reserved for grave matters. What would Ava say? As she contemplated the upcoming meeting, a wave of anxiety washed over her. Would Ava confront the situation head-on, or had she already begun plotting to have Lila dismissed? The mere thought of losing her job sent a jolt of dread through her, twisting her stomach in knots. She had poured her heart and soul into her career, taking immense pride in her professionalism and her ability to navigate high-pressure scenarios. Yet now, due to a single misstep, everything she had tirelessly built was hanging by a thread. The walk to her car felt interminable, her mind racing with every conceivable outcome of tomorrow's confrontation. If Ava wielded the influence Lila feared, the stakes were higher than she could bear. There was no room for negotiation, no second chances. Sarah Mitchell held the power to determine her fate, and there was nothing Ella could do to intervene. By the time she reached her car, her body was shaking with anxiety. She sank into the driver's seat, gripping the wheel as if it were her only anchor, desperately trying to steady her racing heart. The reflection staring back at her from the rearview mirror was a stranger. Her usually poised face was now ghostly pale, her eyes wide with terror. She felt like a mere shadow of the confident flight attendant she had been just hours earlier. Suddenly, her phone buzzed again, jolting her from the whirlwind of her thoughts. It wasn't just an email. It was a heartfelt text from Jessica Carter. Hey, you okay? I heard from Diane Reynolds that you're worried about what happened earlier. Let me know if you need to talk. Ella stared at the message, torn between the urge to share her burdens and the heavy shame that clung to her for how she had managed the situation. In the end, she typed a short reply. I'll be fine, thanks. With a sigh, she set her phone down and rested her forehead against the steering wheel, feeling the weight of her emotions pressing down on her. With her eyes closed, she realized she couldn't change the past, but she could brace herself for what lay ahead. If she was to confront Ava or anyone else at corporate, a solid plan was essential. That night, sleep eluded her as she lay in bed, her mind a whirlwind of thoughts, replaying every encounter with Ava. She desperately sought the moment everything had spiraled out of control, but it felt like an unending cycle of errors and miscommunications. By the time the first light of dawn seeped through her window, she felt no closer to unraveling the mystery of how to mend it all. The next morning, Lila dressed with great care, choosing a professional yet understated look. Her university uniform had always filled her with pride, a testament to her hard work and dedication. But today it felt more like a shield, a barrier to hide behind as she confronted what could be the end of her career. The drive to the corporate office was enveloped in silence, the familiar hum of the radio drowned out by the overwhelming roar of her own thoughts. As she pulled into the parking lot, she couldn't help but notice the building's immaculate appearance, its glass facade gleaming in the light. Gleaming in the morning sun, the building stood as a stark reminder of the immense power and influence contained within its walls, almost taunting her. As she approached the front desk, the receptionist greeted her with a polite yet indifferent smile. "You're here for the 9 o'clock meeting," the receptionist stated, fingers dancing over the keyboard. Lila nodded, her throat constricted, making it impossible to utter a word. "Conference room B," the receptionist said, gesturing down the hallway. With each step down the immaculate corridor, Lila felt her legs turn to lead, the sound of her footsteps echoing in her ears, amplifying the weight of her dread. As she approached the conference room, she hesitated just outside the door, her hand trembling above the handle. The soft murmur of voices drifted through the door, but their words remained a mystery to her. Gathering the last remnants of her courage, Ella finally pushed the door open and stepped inside. The room was sleek and modern, dominated by a long table at its center. At the head of the table sat Sarah Mitchell, who looked up as Ella entered. Her expression was calm and composed, her presence commanding the space, and for a fleeting moment, Ella felt as though the very air had thickened around her. Drained of energy, other members of the corporate team gathered around the table, their expressions calm yet watchful. "Miss Thompson," Ava said, her voice soothing and steady, "please take a seat." Ella swallowed hard, a knot tightening in her throat, and nodded as she moved to the nearest chair. As she settled down, she could feel the weight of every gaze in the room piercing through her. She clenched her hands tightly in her lap, desperately trying to quell the tremor in her fingers. Ava rested her hands on the table, her eyes locked onto Laz. "I believe you know why you're here," she began, her tone devoid of anger or accusation, yet heavy with unspoken implications. But it carried an undeniable weight that made Layla's stomach churn. This was it, the moment she had been fearing, and there was no way out. The room felt cold and sterile, a place where decisions were made without a hint of compassion. Layla sat rigidly in her chair, her heart racing so fiercely she feared everyone could hear it. Sarah Mitchell, positioned at the head of the table, radiated an authority that seemed to envelop every inch of the room. Her calm demeanor offered no solace. Instead, it sent shivers down Layla's spine. Her palms were clammy and she battled the overwhelming urge to fidget, acutely aware that every single movement would be under the microscope. "I understand there was an incident on Flight 827, Ava began, her tone steady yet resolute, her gaze locked onto Ella with unwavering intensity. "I'd like to hear your perspective before we proceed." Those words hung in the air, both a lifeline and a snare, leaving Ella in a state of turmoil. She hesitated, her mind racing to piece together the perfect response. The night had been spent rehearsing what she might say, but now standing before Ava, her thoughts collided in a chaotic whirlwind. "Miss Daniels," Ella started, her voice trembling, feeling the weight of the moment pressing down on her. Cleared her throat and tried again. "First, I want to sincerely apologize for my actions during the flight. I misunderstood the situation, and I let my assumptions cloud my judgment. I never intended to disrespect you or cause any discomfort." Ava's expression remained unchanged, yet she nodded slightly, encouraging Ella to continue. "I was trying to ensure everything ran smoothly," Ella continued, her voice gaining a bit more steadiness. "But I see now that I acted inappropriately. I made assumptions about you as a passenger, and I handled the situation poorly. I find myself reflecting on the situation with deep regret, fully owning my actions." When she concluded, an almost palpable silence enveloped the room, and I could feel the heaviness of my words lingering, uncertain if they resonated as I had hoped. Ava leaned back in her chair, her fingers intertwined, her gaze fixed on me with an intensity that made me uncomfortable. "Assumptions," she echoed softly, as if weighing the word. "Yes, I noticed that during the flight, and having spent years in this industry, I can easily identify when those assumptions arise." From a place far beyond mere mistakes, Lila felt her heart drop. She parted her lips to speak, but Ava raised a hand, halting her. "I appreciate your apology, Miss Thompson," Ava said, her voice unwavering yet resolute. "I can see that you genuinely mean it. But this goes beyond a single moment. It's about what that moment signifies. When we make assumptions about others, about who they are, what they deserve, or where they fit, we contribute to a culture that erodes the very values we hold dear in this company." Lila nodded slowly, her heart heavy with understanding. A wave of emotion washed over me as Ava's words pierced through my defenses, revealing a truth I hadn't anticipated. This wasn't just a reprimand, it was a call to confront something far more profound, something deeply rooted. I remained quiet during the flight, not because I was oblivious to the unfolding events, but because I yearned to witness how you and the crew navigated this moment. As the CEO of this airline, my commitment lies in truly understanding the experiences of both our passengers and our staff. What I witnessed on that flight was a stark reminder that our journey toward improvement is far from over, Lila. A lump formed in her throat as Ava's calmness radiated a strength far beyond any anger. This moment transcended mere punishment. It was about facing the truth of one's actions, and Ella felt the heavy burden of her choices pressing down on her. Ava's gaze softened just a touch, yet her voice held a resolute firmness. I also believe in growth and second chances, she said. This incident could have been handled better, but I've seen the way you connect with passengers on previous flights. You are capable of so much more than what I witnessed yesterday. Ella blinked in astonishment, taken aback by the unexpected compassion. A sense of relief began to wash over her, yet it was tinged with the weight of Ava's serious words. Here's what will happen, Ava stated, her voice firm and resolute. You will take part in a mandatory training program centered on unconscious bias and customer service. This isn't just for you. It's a company-wide initiative. Additionally, I will require a written report from you outlining what you've learned from this experience and how you intend to implement those lessons in the future. Ella nodded quickly, her voice quivering with emotion, as she expressed her gratitude. Thank you, Miss Daniels. I truly appreciate the chance to learn and grow. I promise I won't let you down. Ava managed a faint smile, the first glimmer of warmth Lila had witnessed since stepping into the room. I hope you don't, because this journey is not just about learning, it's also about mending the trust between us, the company, and the passengers who depend on us. The meeting felt like both a breath of fresh air and a looming caution. Lila realized that while her job was secure for now, the heavy burden of Ava's expectations would shadow her from that moment onward. As the other corporate members began to rise, signaling the conclusion of the meeting, Lila Rose felt her legs tremble beneath her, yet they remained functional. Before she exited, she paused beside Ava, her voice a soft whisper, steady despite the weight of the moment. Thank you again, Miss Daniels. I won't waste this chance. Ava nodded, their eyes locking in a moment charged with unspoken emotions, neither condoning nor forgiving, but filled with expectation. I'll hold you to that, Miss Thompson. As Lila stepped out of the conference room and into the hallway, a wave of exhaustion washed over her, mingling with a flicker of cautious hope. The road ahead promised to be challenging, but at last she felt a glimmer of hope for the first time since the flight. As Leia stepped out of the corporate office and into the fresh air, a wave of tentative relief enveloped her. The burden she had been shouldering wasn't entirely lifted, but it had shifted. Sarah Mitchell's words resonated in her mind, firm yet nurturing, critical yet just. It was evident that Ava had taken the incident seriously, but she hadn't allowed it to dictate Laya's future. The opportunity to grow, to mend the trust that had been fractured, was now within reach. The responsibility lay in Laya's hands. As she drove home, Ella found herself lost in thought, reflecting on the whirlwind of emotions from the past day. She realized how her own assumptions and defensiveness had steered her away from the truth, and how a simple moment of pause could have changed everything. The weight of regret settled in her heart as she recalled Ava's calm and composed presence during the flight, a stark contrast to her own turmoil. It was as if Ava had held up a mirror, revealing the grace under pressure, clarity of thought, and unwavering commitment to fairness that La longed to embody. Upon arriving home, she found Lila sitting quietly in the kitchen, the silence echoing the depth of her introspection. She sat at the table, her laptop open, determination radiating from her. Time was precious and she refused to squander it. The report Ava had asked for wasn't due for days, but she felt an urgent need to begin while the experience still lingered vividly in her mind. As her fingers danced across the keyboard, the words flowed more freely than she had anticipated. Reflection on Flight 827, a journey filled with lessons in leadership and humility. During Flight 827, I allowed a series of assumptions about a passenger to cloud my judgment, leading to actions I now deeply regret. What started as a simple misunderstanding spiraled out of control, fueled by my stubbornness to pause and reassess the situation. In this moment, I witnessed the profound impact of empathy and professionalism. This incident transcended a mere lapse in judgment. It was a heartbreaking failure to embody the core values our airline holds dear. From Miss Daniels' calm demeanor and her thoughtful approach, I discovered the essence of true leadership. It's not merely about wielding authority, it's about preserving respect and grace, even in the face of adversity. Her response served as a poignant reminder that every passenger, no matter their circumstances, deserves to be treated with dignity and compassion, the assumptions we might carry into the future. I am wholeheartedly dedicated to embracing these lessons, not just in my interactions with passengers, but also in how I uplift my colleagues and foster a more inclusive workplace culture. I recognize that trust is something that must be earned, and I am resolutely committed to rebuilding it through my actions. As I read over her words, my fingers hovered above the keyboard, feeling the weight of their honesty, their rawness, their vulnerability for the first time in what felt like an eternity. A small smile crept onto my face. This was more than just about fulfilling a corporate request, marked the start of a deeply personal journey. The weeks that followed were not just challenging, they were transformative. LA engaged wholeheartedly in the mandatory training program Ava had spoken of, diving into lessons on unconscious bias, communication, and emotional intelligence. It was a struggle to face her own blind spots. Yet this experience illuminated how those very blind spots had influenced her actions. She discovered the power of listening more intently, questioning her assumptions, and embracing every situation with a newfound openness. In the midst of her flights, LA discovered a profound transformation within herself. She chose to embrace a new way of connecting with passengers, seeing them not merely as part of her responsibilities, but as unique individuals, each carrying their own stories and experiences. Her interactions blossomed into something more authentic. Her tone softened and became more thoughtful. Gradually, she sensed a beautiful change in the way both passengers and her colleagues responded to her. Trust, as Ava had wisely pointed out, was being lovingly rebuilt, one small step at a time. Months later, during a routine staff meeting, LEA's eyes caught sight of Sarah Mitchell in the back of the room, a reminder of the journey they had shared. As she led the meeting, her presence was quiet, almost unassuming. Lila's heart raced when their eyes met, and she received a small approving nod. It was a fleeting moment of validation, subtle yet profoundly impactful, that lingered with Lila long after the meeting had concluded. The incident on Flight 827 had become a pivotal chapter in Lila's career, not a source of shame, but a transformative experience. She realized that it was less about punishment and more about personal growth, a powerful lesson that true leadership transcends status or authority. It lies in the way you treat others. Even amidst the most daunting challenges, years later as Lila Rose ascended through the ranks of the airline, she frequently reflected on that pivotal flight and the serene, poised woman in 2A who had forever altered the course of her career. Sarah Mitchell's remarkable leadership had etched a lasting impression on her, influencing not just her professional approach, but also the way she navigated life itself. For this, Lila would always hold a deep sense of gratitude. Thank you for watching. We would love to hear your thoughts in the comments. And please remember to like, share, and subscribe for more inspiring content. At this moment, stories unfold, weaving together moments that resonate deeply within us. The story of Sarah Mitchell and Layla Thompson reveals the peril of unconscious bias and the strength of dignified composure. It teaches that judging others based on appearances can lead to unjust actions, emphasizing the need for empathy and fairness. Sarah's calm response to Ella's challenge shows that poise under pressure can reveal truth more effectively than confrontation, fostering accountability without conflict. In modern America, where inclusivity is vital, this lesson is profound. Bias persists in workplaces, schools, and communities, often clouding judgment. The story encourages pausing to verify assumptions, as Ella's failure to confirm Sarah's ticket escalated the situation. Today, this applies to everyday interactions, whether addressing a colleague's role or a stranger's intentions. By listening and seeking understanding, we build trust and equity. Practically, we can apply this by questioning snap judgments, engaging with humility, and learning from diverse perspectives. Sarah's leadership inspires us to treat everyone with respect, regardless of status. In 2025, as America grows more diverse, these habits, verifying facts, staying composed, and valuing dignity, can create inclusive spaces where all feel valued, strengthening communities one interaction at a time.